Hello and welcome to the India Energy Hour. I am Sandeep Pai, a former journalist with Hindustan Times and now an energy researcher at the University of British Columbia.
And I'm Shreya Jay, journalist with Business Standard newspaper in Delhi, writing on the energy sector.
Together, we are really excited to co-host a new podcast on India's energy transition, the India Energy Hour. This podcast is hosted by 101 Reporters, an innovative news agency that connects grassroots reporters and media houses to bring out untold stories. The show is produced by Tejas Dayanand Sagar of 101 Reporters.
In this podcast, we want to unpack and document India's energy transition. We will interview leading energy, development, and climate experts from academia, civil society, and the government. Through these interviews, we will explore the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities in the energy transition unfolding in India. We will examine the role of government, finance, social justice, and science. Over time, we will feature other countries of the global south as well.
Last month, leading car manufacturer General Motors said that by 2035, it will only sell zero-emission vehicles. Many countries around the world are banning the sale of internal combustion engine cars and embracing electric vehicles. In India, the government and leading car manufacturers are also planning to go big on electric vehicles. While these efforts may help make electric vehicles the future of mobility in India, there are several roadblocks that need to be resolved to unleash the true potential of electric vehicles. In our fifth episode, we spoke to Sumant Banerji, senior journalist and associate editor of the Business Today magazine, about the current and future prospects of electric vehicles in the country. Sumant has researched and written about the Indian auto sector for well over a decade and is considered a leading expert in this area. Hello Sumant, welcome to the India Energy Hour. It's such a pleasure to have you today. We were colleagues for some time in Hindustan Times, and one of the things that fascinated me always was like your passion for cars and how you would always sort of review different cars and stuff. So welcome. We're really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you, Sandeep. Pleasure to be on this fantastic new platform that you have built. I have heard a couple of podcasts that you have created, and it's very fascinating, very in depth. And I'm sure whoever listens to it, he gets a pretty clear understanding of all the topics that you hit upon. So great work, and absolutely thrilled to be here.
Okay, great. So let's get started. So before we get into sort of your, talking about cars and EV and other stuff, we just want to talk about you, Sumant, right? So you have been a journalist and writing about the auto sector for now well over a decade now. And you have reported about from government policies to, car manufacturers. You have reviewed cars. You've written from a consumer perspective. But so that was your sort of journalistic journey. But before that, what did you study? How did you get interested in this sector? I know that you are from Allahabad, and how did this Allahabad boy become so interested in cars and sort of now is recognized as the country's top reporter in the auto sector? Tell us about your story and journey.
So my story, as you told yourself, I was born in Allahabad. I did my schooling from there, from St. Joseph's. And cars is something that fascinated me right from my childhood. I was always a little intrigued that, a man can move from one place to the other so fast. And other than just the fastness of it, it always fascinated me as an engineering product, that such a big, huge vehicle, and it could transport you in such comfort, and so many different shapes and sizes, different engines, the lights, everything. It was very, very fascinating. And since childhood, as my mother can attest, I was always playing with cars. I always wanted to, get a touch and feel of cars. I would always coax my father. We had a Premier Padmini then, like most people around in India. So I would always coax my father to go for a ride. And so as I started growing up, this fascination only became more intense, and I sort of became obsessed with cars. I used to keep cuttings of various different models of cars, even from advertisements that would appear in magazines and newspapers. And as I turned into a more serious person later on in terms of education, I thought about doing automobile engineering. But then, from a small town, and in those days, you did not have too many options to do hardcore automobile engineering. You had to do a proper normal engineering, mechanical engineering of some sort, and then you would probably wish that you would get to make or build cars. And so that was not to be, because obviously my grades were not that great to become an engineer. But as luck would turn out, that I chose literature in my later years as a means of education. And from literature, I came into journalism. And in journalism, luckily, I got to do automobile journalism, where I could again, go back to my real passion about knowing more about cars. And then I started reviewing cars. So I have been lucky that I'm doing what I love doing. I'm not building cars, but yes, I am getting to be as close to cars as is humanly possible, driving different kinds of cars and talking about different aspects of cars, and also about the policies that shape the whole automobile engineering in a very vibrant market like India. So that's what essentially is my story.
So just a follow up. That's so interesting. So which newspaper, or I guess news outlet, did you start your career with? But also, like, when you started, was cars your the auto sector in general was your first beat, or which editor? How did you get introduced to this sector?
Okay, so I started out in Business Standard as a corporate reporter, but I wasn't covering automobiles then, because I was a cub reporter, and automobiles is a beat which is quite, I would say, lucrative. And so it's only given to very senior reporters who have deeper understanding about business and economy. And as a cub reporter, obviously, you don't have that. So I started with covering real estate and textiles in Business Standard. But my stint at Business Standard was very, very short. It was barely a year. And from there, I moved on to Indian Express, which was a more general newspaper. And Indian Express had a very, very small business team. And there, my editor was Sunit Arora. And so he said that, what all would you like to cover? Because we have almost everything that you can cover, except for finance and commerce and telecom, for which we had a couple of reporters. So he said that, the entire corporate is yours. You can cover real estate, you can cover automobiles, you can cover pharma, whatever you want to cover. So I said that I would be very interested in covering automobiles, because that's something that really fascinates me. And he said, yeah, sure, please do it. But obviously, alongside, I had many other beats, as we say, also many other sectors to cover as well. But then, there is so much activity in automobiles any which way that I got deeper and deeper into this particular sector, knowing more people. And my editor was also very happy with whatever stories I would bring. And I would bring multiple stories, because, if you have an interest in one particular thing, then you tend to get more stories and you tend to get more information. You are automatically researching more. And so that's how the story began. That was in Indian Express. And so I honed my skills. I became a more established reporter as well. I got to know the ins and outs about journalism, how to build a story, how to make sources or develop sources. And then on, I moved to Hindustan Times, where obviously we met as colleagues. And as you know, Hindustan Times is a more mass-to-mass kind of a newspaper, where consumer interest stories and consumer-facing stories are given more credence. And that is where automobiles got an even extra fillip, because whatever you do, which car is going to get launched, which cars are doing well, what new technologies are going to come in, those kind of stories did very, very well. So I became more established, and then I got kind of stuck with this automobile beat, and I established myself here.
Okay, that's so fascinating. I mean, you have worked with some of the top newspapers covering this topic. Okay, one very, sort of like a fast question. How many cars have you reviewed, over the years?
No, I have not kept count of it. Must be in the hundreds. Must be too many. So almost every on a weekly basis, I'm like driving and reviewing. In the heydays of Hindustan Times, I was doing almost 2 or 3 cars every week. Now it's down to probably I drive 1 car a week, more leisurely, spending more time with the car. So there may be so many. It's been over 15 years now. So too many cars, and I will say touch wood. I'm not complaining.
Okay, okay, this is finally, I'm just fascinated. So, when you review a car and, sort of your review is, say, neutral or not good for the company, how do they react? Like, be it any company, from Maruti to Tata's or whatever, like, how do they react to your reviews and are they like mad at you and how do you handle all that?
So yeah, once in a while they would get mad at me, or they would show their disappointment that, oh no, you really you say a lot of nasty things about the car, and you have to understand that it's like our baby and it takes so much time to develop and then make, and you haven't made any car in your life, so how do you know? But I'm like, it's okay. You might be. I mean, for the company, they are always a little biased about their own cars. Obviously, we are always biased about our own things, and similar it is with them. I have to be a little neutral, and I have to also always keep in mind about the consumer. That's the first port of call. That I'm writing for the consumers. I'm not writing for myself. I'm not even writing for my editor. I'm writing for the consumer, and I would have to always keep his interests in mind. And so when I get inside a car, the first thing that I look for is what is wrong with the car. I know it's a negative way of looking at it, because whatever that impresses you in a car, that becomes very very obvious as you drive the car, as you spend more time. But the first thing that I look for is what is it that the car where the car can improve or should have been improved. Is the plastic quality good? Does it ride and handle well? Is the power delivery linear? Are the brakes working? So things like these. And so once you get a sense of where the car is not working, then writing a review becomes easier, because then you are trying to focus more on, oh, this is not working. So can we get to the bottom of it? Why is it not working? So that we can also send a proper feedback to the company saying, maybe the suspension could have been tuned a little differently so the car handles better and becomes safer, etc., etc. Or the build quality could be better, or maybe some of the other durable aspects of the car so that it ages well, kind of thing. So yes, sometimes the manufacturers do get a little nasty and they do get a little angry, but then so it is. So no problems. It's part of the game.
How did it feel when you first time tried an electric vehicle? Were you excited, and how did it, felt different from driving, petrol, diesel, and CNG cars? If you can tell us about that experience. After that, probably then we can go and ask about electric vehicles.
Oh, the first electric vehicle that I drove was way back in Japan, where I drove one of the fuel cell vehicles of Honda, and that was very, very nascent. And we were not. I wasn't even so. I would say well informed about electrification of cars. I read about it a little bit, but we weren't talking about electrification. This is back in 2007 or 2008, if my memory serves me right. And so it was very, very fascinating, because the first thing that caught my attention was, obviously there was absolutely no noise. And we are always associating noise with a car. And if you ask me, then I also like the noise of a car. The way the engine revs, and some of the high-end cars, they have a very sweet noise. And it's always, it's always associated with a car. So to not have a noise at all, it was slightly unnerving that, oh, are we moving at all? Because there's hardly any noise. So the only thing that you hear is probably the tires rumbling on the tarmac, and that's it. There's no engine noise. There's no noise otherwise. So it was like a monk in a Ferrari kind of thing. And the other bit was that the acceleration was really something, because as technically one would say that a motor, an internal combustion engine, It accelerates in one particular way, which is a little staggered, and which is why you have so many gears. Whereas the torque curve in a electric vehicle is very very linear. You get everything at one go, so it's like a rocket, and so it takes you back, and you have to spend some time to get used to it, and it is really really exciting because even in a very small or a budget car, you are getting the acceleration of a very very high end car. So it won't go very fast in terms of speed probably, but the initial acceleration is almost as fast as some of the supercars. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Matlab, the noiseless part of electric vehicle is something that is very interesting, something that Indians are not used to on the road. So I don't know if it is true, but I've heard that some of the two-wheeler makers, electric vehicle two-wheelers, makers are now putting different kind of noises in the bikes, right? So that it makes a kind of a sound when it starts, to give the feel to the rider. Is it true?
Yes, that is correct. They are looking at that because very simply, this is a very, very alien concept, and we are, as a nation, we are very resistant to any kind of change, good or bad, whatever it might be. So, for the sake of just continuity, they are saying that we will put in some sort of a noise. Also, because a lot of jaywalkers that we have around, and this is a very, very populated country. They associate their road behavior in terms of the noise that you get from vehicles on the road. So if you don't get any noise, they probably think they are not looking all the time. So they probably think there's nothing behind me or there's nothing, so I will cross the road. So that also is a concern, that if a vehicle does not make any sort of noise, how are the bystanders on the roads? How are they going to react? They will probably just jump in front of a car or a two-wheeler. So it's also from that angle that they are saying that we should put in some sort of a noise, so everybody knows that there's a vehicle running around and they should be a little more careful. So it's a mix of both. But ultimately it is about your behavior pattern, that how do you associate vehicles, and the noise is a very intrinsic part. And EVs will have no noise, so they are putting in some sort of a noise so that everybody is a little more at ease at that. Okay, this is ultimately a normal vehicle.
Let's move on to now electric mobility. The vehicles don't make noise, but the sector sure is. Globally, EVs are being so much talked about. Even in India, there's some great ambitious plans that were made. Companies are now talking about it actively. General Motors recently said that it will sell only zero-emission vehicles by 2035. A lot of countries are going ahead and banning the sale of internal combustion engine or ICE, as you mentioned, in the future. So if you can tell us, if you can drive us through the journey of this sector, how it has evolved in the past decade, if I may say so, in India, and if you can explain us what different types of EVs are.
So EVs, essentially, there are 2-3 different kinds. The first one obviously are sort of hybrids, where you have a mix of an engine and an electric motor. So that's the first, only basic kind of a EV, which is not entirely zero emission, but it has substantially lower emissions as compared to a hardcore combustion engine. But then you have battery electric vehicles, which are pure play electric vehicles, only electric motors powering vehicles. And then you have different kinds of permutations and combinations as to how you refuel or recharge the car. So you can have a plug-in hybrid, or you can have a fuel cell vehicle later on where you use hydrogen. So those kind of vehicles. So essentially different ways of recharging, but ultimately the car is always moving or being powered by an electric motor. So that's essentially what an EV is. And the journey of EVs globally and the journey of EVs in India is a very different path. Globally, obviously, it started out in the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. That is where most of the EV development of the initial stages happened. And then the kind of inflection point was reached when China came into the picture, and China simply went ahead and banned ICE two-wheelers, and they said that only electric two-wheelers will ply on our roads. And then very quickly they have moved on to electric trucks and electric cars, and it is now the largest market for electric vehicles because China does things in a way that nobody else in the world does. And so they have completely placed their bets on EVs as a future of mobility in the world, and invested in big time into batteries, invested into cobalt and nickel mining in the African nations and Latin American countries, and they have completely energized and developed the EV infrastructure around them with charging stations and batteries being swapped, etc. And so basically, China is driving the EV market right now. Even US has come into the picture, and you have Tesla, which is making a lot of noise. Elon Musk has done great things on the software part of EVs, making it very quirky and cool, which was very essential for a new technology, not just to have its own strength as a technology, but also the cool quotient. So Elon Musk is doing for EVs something which is very similar to what Steve Jobs did with smartphones and smart appliances at Apple. So that is how it stands right now. Everybody is looking forward to EVs. Even in India, in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of talk, more talk than action actually. But there has been some action as well. In two-wheelers, we have seen many new startups come up. Many companies have invested. In electric cars, the movement has been a little slower. None of the main mass market car makers, except maybe Tata Motors, has really shown their skills in EV, but it is taking off. So if I can just say that yesterday Volvo unveiled their first all-electric car for India, even though they have many cars worldwide, and they were the first ones to say that they will go complete electric by 2025 or 26. But in India, they showcased their first car, which would be launched sometime. The first deliveries will be made sometime in October this year. So very often we are now going for press conferences where electric vehicles are being showcased and shown to us. And invariably, even if it's not an EV event, the talk is always about EVs. So even if we are going for a random normal car launch, we will always ask that company about their electric vehicle plans. So it is now on top of everybody's mind. And the questions that I get asked these days is also a lot on EVs. So even consumers who are looking to buy another car, they would invariably ask me whether they should consider an EV right now or not. So it is on everybody's mind. Everybody's thinking about that. And I only think that it will gain momentum and acceleration as we go forward. There's no looking back on this.
Great. I mean, I have a follow-up, and probably it's a very basic question, but I think just for the sake of, our listeners who may not be fully aware about the sector. So among the different categories of EV, two-wheelers, four-wheelers, commercial vehicles, which segment, or three-wheelers, which segment is growing the fastest, and which segment sort of you think will have the maximum growth in, let's say, the next 5 years?
Okay, so the segment in India which has really taken off in EVs, and I just got some information yesterday on the current trend, is actually the three-wheelers. And this is something that escapes our attention because we have three-wheelers all around us, but we don't really notice them because they're not so cool actually. But three-wheelers have completely electrified themselves, not completely, but majorly. You have all these small tuk-tuks that give you last mile connectivity from a metro station to your home, or from one locality to the other locality, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometer radius types. And you have these electric three-wheelers that are flying around these days. And like I said, yesterday I got information that electric three-wheelers now accounts for 36% of sales, new sales in India. And it is more than any of the other permutation combinations. So you have petrol, you have diesel, you have also CNG. So all of those combined, obviously, that makes up 64%. But in isolation, now EVs in three-wheelers is bigger than any other fuel type. So that is one change that we have already seen. But three-wheelers is very small in terms of volumes in India. The other big bet, and which is everybody considers the low-hanging fruit, is two-wheelers. That two-wheelers is one segment which can potentially almost overnight change into EVs, provided you have the right product and at the right price, and with a decent range. Because typically two-wheelers, they don't cover too many kilometers every day. They are only based inside the city. You travel from one place to the other, but only within the city. You don't travel from one city to the next other city too much in a two-wheeler. Some people do, but that's a minority. Most of the two-wheelers are only for traveling within the city. So if you have a decent 100-kilometer range for an electric vehicle, you can easily shift to a two-wheeler. Given the high petrol prices that we have these days, and I consider that petrol prices will remain high in future whenever. So the attraction of electric vehicles, given the low cost of ownership, is almost negligible cost of refueling, will be very attractive. Also, electric vehicles for two-wheelers is something where you can have swappable batteries very conveniently. So you can easily take out the battery, which weighs something around 6 or 7 kgs in a two-wheeler, a small two-wheeler, and you can take it up to your place and get it recharged, or you can swap it with another battery. It's very easy. It's a little more cumbersome for electric cars. So that is what people say, and India is a very big market for two-wheelers. Almost 20 million two-wheelers being sold in the country every year. So this is a huge market. So even if you get a decent slice of the pie going forward, you will have a proliferation of EVs all around us. So the attention, obviously, in terms of mind space is more on electric cars because they're obviously sexy. But it is actually two-wheelers that can be the harbinger of this whole EV revolution that we are talking about.
And what about the four-wheelers and commercial vehicles? Where are they at? Like you nicely explained about three-wheelers and two-wheelers, but what about the private cars as well as commercial vehicles?
So in commercial vehicles, there are obviously two aspects. One is buses and the other is trucks. So in buses already, various state governments and the transport authorities, they have given out tenders for electric buses, and the response has been very encouraging. We have got some very low bid prices for that. So they have moved on to electric buses in bits and starts, but there has been a start made. Trucks, long haulage vehicles, I think it will take a lot of time, because very simply these are for haulage vehicles where you carry freight from one state to the other state. You're traveling very, very long distances, maybe 250 kilometers every day. And so recharging is an issue, and you will need a huge battery for these kind of trucks, and they will take a lot of time to get recharged. And where do you recharge? There's absolutely no infrastructure. So for trucks, it will take a lot of time. Some companies like Toyota tell me that their hunch is that for long haulage vehicles like trucks, it is much better to have hydrogen fuel vehicles where you can simply, tank up the hydrogen, and that chemical reaction gives you the electricity for the electric motor. And so that is where they see is the future for freight trucks. But then that's also in a development phase, so we don't really know what will happen. But given the way EVs function, I think in trucks it will take a lot of time. We are looking at 20 years maybe before you can really have an electric truck doing the rounds in India on a regular basis. And this is also a segment which changes very, very slowly. So you will have very, very archaic old trucks on Indian roads. Some of them are even non-BS emission vehicles which are still on the road. Which is why we are now talking about scrappage incentives and scrappage schemes for commercial vehicles. So this is a segment which changes itself very slowly because the cost is an impediment, and a very unorganized sector. We don't have very many big players with a lot of haulage trucks with them. So small transporters with maybe 1, 2 or 3 trucks, very small incomes. So they will not like to change very soon. So this is a segment which will lag. Now, as far as electric cars is concerned, obviously infrastructure is a challenge. Where do you charge? And we know the reality in India is that people don't even have very proper demarcated parking for themselves. They just park wherever they find space. Now, if you have an electric car, you will need proper charging points so that you can charge overnight, or you need a charging point in wherever your office is, because the car will need to get charged. So that is a big handicap which people are facing. And so the movement has been slow, but there is a lot of talk about community charging stations, etc., etc. So a lot of solutions being found about. So I think maybe in another 5 years' time, you will see some decent movement in electric cars in India.
Great. I have one more question, and then I will pass it on to Shreya. Uh, give me a sense of who, first of all, is different kinds of EVs currently manufactured in India, or is India, like Indian manufacturers importing, sort of like most of the parts and then just assembling it? Like explain the manufacturing, sort of like the manufacturing space with regards to EV in India. Who is manufacturing, which companies, and who is importing and just assembling, etc.
Okay, so interesting part about manufacturing. See, there is the biggest problem in manufacturing in EV is obviously the battery, and globally it is China which has become the hub for battery manufacturing. And most of the batteries, these are similar to the batteries that we have in our smartphones, which is lithium-ion battery in a bigger format. And so these batteries are coming from China mostly, or you have countries like Taiwan and Korea and Japan which are making a little bit of batteries. So they supply the batteries all over, and this is, if not anything, then it costs about 50 to 60% of the cost of a vehicle is the battery. In India, we have very limited options for electric cars right now. We have the Hyundai Kona. We have there is a car by Morris Garage's ZS, and in recent times we have a few products from Tata Motors and Mahindra. So the cars that are being sold by Tata Motors and Mahindra, they are, in a way, we can say they are being manufactured here, except for the battery pack, which comes mostly from China, in almost a complete packed format. But most of the other things, the electric motors and the suspension, the steering columns, the body panels, etc., they are all being made in India because that's very common to the other parts, the other cars that we have here. So Tata Motors and Mahindra are making in India, but Hyundai Kona is a complete import. It's imported from Korea. ZS EV from MG is a complete import. They import it from UK. And then you have the high-end products like last year, Mercedes launched their first electric car, the EQC, which is being imported from Germany. So these are complete imports. There nothing is being manufactured in it. It's not even being assembled here. These are all coming in as straight cars. So we have 3-4 cars which are complete imports, and then we have cars like from Tata and Mahindra, which you can say that they are being manufactured, except for the battery. In terms of cost as well, the again another inflection point will be when we really start making batteries here in India, and this is a very, very capital intensive, difficult part of the game, because manufacturing lithium-ion cells is very expensive. You need very high tech factories and a lot of capital to be invested. Also, generally this is a tough business because you don't know what kind of battery chemistry and what kind of battery will be there in the long term. So you can invest in lithium ion cells today, but maybe in 5 years time it may become redundant, and so all the investment that you are making today may not give you the returns that you are looking for. So it's a difficult call to take. China can take it because China always had the export component in mind, and they're one of the largest exporters across the world as an economy. So when they make a battery, they are also exporting, like they're exporting to India, they're exporting to the US, they're exporting to all parts of Europe. So the export component is very high. Unfortunately, in India, we don't look at exports as proactively as China, which also sort of handicaps us when we make a business case for any high capital intensive kind of business. So that could be a potential game changer when we actually start making batteries. But there are some deep thinking needs to be done on how we get about that.
Now that we are talking about what's happening in India, let's start with what policies are there in India to promote electric vehicle. There was this very famous policy called FAME that was launched by Indian government some time back and had ambitious targets. We were talking about 100% electric mobility by 2030. Then obviously it was dialed down. If you can tell us about this particular policy we call the FAME policy, which was launched by the central government some time back. What does the policy is all about? What is its ambitions and targets, and how far we have come when it comes to this particular policy?
Okay, so FAME is obviously the flagship scheme that we have in India right now, which gives out a lot of incentives to different categories of EVs, and which talks about how EVs can proliferate in India. Now, the success of it is a mixed bag. There has been some movement, as sales numbers also show, and as I mentioned, that in three-wheelers, for example, EVs have taken off. But EVs haven't taken off so much in two-wheelers. And in cars, obviously, there are issues, so it will be slow, and the government also realizes that. So, from a point of view of what the policymakers are thinking, we know that there are some central ministers like Nitin Gadkari, then we have Niti Aayog CEO, Amitabh Kant, who are very big proponents of EV because they see it as a one-stop solution to a lot of problems that we have. So these problems are obviously climate change. India is one of the most polluted places in the world, and we are facing the brunt of climate change. The summers are getting hotter, the winters are getting more severe, the glaciers are melting, so you have some natural disaster or the other are high up in the Himalayas. So we are facing the brunt of it, and the need for us to really reform ourselves is very acute. EVs is one solution because you completely transform the mobility sector, which contributes significantly to air pollution. Our cities are becoming unlivable because of bad quality of air. A lot of people die because of respiratory diseases. So again, EVs help in combating that. And also, we are an oil importing country. 85% of the oil that we use is being imported from the Middle East. So that's a lot of foreign exchange going away. So again, if you are shifting to EVs, then you don't need to burn oil, you don't need to import oil. So that helps the government exchequer as well. So which is why a lot of talk is there. But typically the thinking is this, that there is no coordinated effort or coordinated policy being framed. So one ministry sitting somewhere is doing something, the other ministry sitting somewhere else is doing something completely different, and there is no coordination between the two. So the movement in the policy framework has been very haphazard. It's not very well aligned. So initially, we had people who just came out of nowhere and said that India should go completely 100% EV by 2030. Taking cue from what we were hearing from Europe, for example, where London said that we will ban all kind of ICE engine vehicles by 2030, and some of the other developed countries in Europe also saying the same. And so we also said, if they can do it, why not us? And so people started making those kind of noises. And then there was obviously a pushback from various other parts of the society, including the manufacturers, automakers, who said that it's simply not possible because India has very different realities. India is not a very developed country, and our purchase decisions, the per capita income is low. The cars that we have, or the two-wheelers that we have in India, are one of the cheapest around the world in terms of price. So this is a segment, this is a market where you cannot have EVs available at that same price, and the government also does not have the kind of capital which is available in other developed economies, developed countries. So you cannot incentivize so much. So the incentives that are there in Germany or Nordic countries or even China, they are humongous compared to what we have in India. So there was obviously a pushback saying that please don't even think about that. Please don't even talk about banning, for example. And that is a very disconcerting trend that we have in India, where government thinks about banning things, which is, I don't think, is ever a solution. Rather, you can frame policies so that one technology becomes automatically redundant and the other policy and the other technology gains ground, instead of simply saying that, we are going to ban this technology and we are only going to promote that other technology. And so that is where we stand. So yes, FAME 2, there was FAME 1 earlier, which had a very limited corpus, and then in FAME 2, it was more, the money was more 10,000 crore rupees, and it was divided into different segments, including for charging stations, etc. But the trend is that obviously because of the pandemic, it has been a little slow to take off. We are lagging behind FAME 2 targets, but I think even if you miss FAME 2 targets, it's not a big deal because nobody knew what pandemic is going to do to world economy. But there is need for a more organized, concerted policy framework. There should be a different ministry or maybe a different minister who just thinks about EVs, because this transformation is a once in a lifetime kind of transformation. There will be a lot of work to be done from across the board, and there are lots of issues with regards to how we have built our economy and how this transformation is going to hit even government finances, for example. So there are too many things involved. There is the power distribution companies, because they would become the petrol pumps, so to say, of the future when you are charging your car from the grid. Then you have the fiscal responsibility, because you are taxing oil and getting a lot of money. So if oil is not being consumed and everything goes to electricity, how is the government going to get the money from? So too many things to think about, too many jigsaw puzzles. So somebody needs to just sit down and put everything together and make a clearer picture out of it.
Yeah, I agree on that, because that is one major issue with EV. As you mentioned, there's no single nodal ministry. Even I get confused which all ministries and who all handle electric vehicle. You talked briefly about the FAME scheme, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicle, which came into two parts, FAME 1, FAME 2. FAME 1 had this humongous amount allocated to it, to the tune of rupees 8 billion or something. If you can just briefly tell us, what did FAME in the first place set out to achieve? And this amount, that amount of money which the taxpayers are paying, was allocated to it. What was it used for? And I'm sure you must have investigated, has it been used at all? And where it was used? What does the money allocated to FAME does?
FAME 1 was really the first big initiative that the government of India had taken for supporting electric vehicles in India. It was started in April 2015, and initially for a period of only 2 years, which was subsequently extended for 2 more years, and it continued to be in place till the end of fiscal 2019. But that was really the time when the government was just, in a way, dipping its toes into this category, trying to frame policies. And the corpus and also the targets were much more humble, I would say. In all, about 530 odd crore were spent under FAME 1 in those 4 years. And as far as the number of vehicles that were subsidized under the scheme, they were roughly about 2.8 lakh electric vehicles, mostly two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Very few, in a matter of a few hundred cars were incentivized. And on top of it, about 500 odd electric buses were also incentivized under FAME 1. But one big difference between FAME 1 and FAME 2 was, in FAME 1, there was a scheme for hybrids as well. So hybrids were incentivized by lower taxation, and some of the mild hybrids of that time got benefited out of it. And Maruti was one of the biggest beneficiaries, so was Mahindra. Now in FAME 2, it is a much bigger scheme. It is in place since April of 2019, and it will last till end of 2022, so roughly 1 more year to go. And it's a much bigger scheme. So when I said FAME 1 had a allocation of just about 500 plus crore, FAME 2 has an allocation of 10,000 crore, and it is much more detailed. The targets are much bigger, and also there are various different components attached to it. So you have incentives for demand creation, you have some element given to even charging infrastructure, which wasn't there in FAME 1, not very specifically. So in FAME 2, like I said, the overall corpus is 10,000 crore, and the targets are very, very specific. So 7,000 electric buses, about 5 like electric three-wheelers, 55,000 electric four-wheelers, and the biggest chunk obviously is 10 lakh electric two-wheelers, which is, like I mentioned, is a low-hanging fruit, and the government really wants a lot of focus there. So as of now, as we can see, that in electric three-wheelers, we will be probably close to that figure under FAME 2. Buses, we have lost some momentum because of COVID, as also in the case of two-wheelers, electric. We are losing momentum because of COVID and also because of a lot of terms and conditions that are in place as to which are the vehicles that get incentivized. So if I can just give you a number that as opposed to 10 lakh electric two-wheelers that are supposed to get benefited under FAME 2 by the end of March 2022, as of now, as in end of calendar year 2020, so 1st of January 2021, only about a little over 30,000 two-wheelers have been benefited under FAME 2. So the gap is massive. We are not even a tenth or close to a tenth of what the target was set out to be. So seriously, there is a need for even more acceleration, more consistency in policies, more engagement with the industry, and so that there are no creases that need to be ironed out after the policy has been announced. Because if that happens time and time again, then you will have a situation, as is the case in FAME 2, where the targets would not be met and instead it will be missed by a huge margin. So that really is the key, which is the key learning for the government and for us as spectators, that where the policy is lagging. So we are lagging on all of these parameters except for three-wheelers. We are lagging everywhere. And that has got to do only with the fact that, like Shreya mentioned, there is not one particular minister or one particular ministry which is 24/7 thinking of this. And that is what is required. You need somebody to think on this every day, every moment, every minute. And that is not happening. So whatever little issues that crop up from time to time, be it in taxation, be it in infrastructure hurdles, etc., they are not getting addressed very in a timely manner, and which is why we have these delays. And for a nascent technology like EVs, this is not very desirable, I would say. You need immediate fix to problems that crop up, and there will be problems, and there will be more problems as we go forward. As we go into hardcore manufacturing, there will be lots of issues, and we need proper government support and we need proper industry support. And unfortunately, that's not happening.
That's actually a really great segue for my next question, which is like you mentioned, there is no coordinated effort. There is no sort of like one minister or ministry who's thinking about this issue. And there's obviously a new technology has many challenges. So give us, you talk to so many manufacturers, like you talk to car companies, etc. Give us a sense of what is the inside scoop? What are they thinking? One thing is that they will announce things, but what are they really thinking about the EV sector? Are they confident that, or they're just doing are they just playing a waiting game, or they are and watching government policy? Give us insights into different manufacturers. You may wish to name them or not, which is totally fine, but we just want to know what is the manufacturer side of the story?
So from the manufacturer side, you just said it yourself when you said that whether they are all playing a waiting game. So that is exactly what they are doing. They are in a kind of a wait and watch mode. They all have electric vehicles in their global portfolio. So Hyundai has, Volkswagen Group. Increasingly, they will have more. Mercedes has, BMW has, Honda, Toyota, all of them, they have electric vehicles in their portfolio. So, and also the making an electric vehicle, the tech side of it is actually very simple. Lesser moving parts, easier to produce. So it's not rocket science. It's actually much more easier to make an electric car vis-a-vis an internal combustion engine vehicle, which was really complex. And so it's a no-brainer that making an EV is a no-brainer. But whether you want to bring it in because you will have acceptance in the market or not, that is a different game. And typically manufacturers look at how prepared are consumers more than the policies. They look at policies, of course, because that's what drives them or that's what controls them. But they are more concerned about whether the market wants EVs or not. And that is where the current trend is that probably the market is not ready for EVs. The consumer, he's thinking about EVs, but he knows that, oh, we cannot have an electric vehicle because where am I going to charge? And this is something that manufacturers know very well. So they have all made noises because the government wants them to talk about EVs. The government wants them to bring out EVs, and which is why you have these Hyundai Konas and the MG ZS and the Tata Motors Nexon EV or the Mahindra E Verito. You have all these products there in the market so that the government cannot tell them that, oh, you are not doing anything about EVs. Where is your car, for example? So they will also see, we have the car, but they are not selling because the incentives are not enough, or the infrastructure is too slow, or there's no charging points, and you're not doing anything about it. So it's a bit of a slinging match between the two. That sometimes the government will ask manufacturers to make a presentation, and then they will completely steamroll them, saying that, oh, you're not doing enough. And the other times the manufacturers will get back to the government and say that, oh, you promised that there will be a X number of charging stations, for example, but where are they? And it's a chicken and egg solution kind of a problem, that if you don't have charging stations, you will not have EVs. But if you do not have EVs, then why do you need charging stations? So it's a peculiar problem where you need the government to step in. And so that is where it stands, that manufacturers are waiting. They are waiting and watching and looking at it very, very keenly. I can say they are very interested because ultimately they don't want anybody else to come and start making EVs and take away their market. And this is ultimately their market, their industry. And like I said, the technology is an easy technology. So it involves a lot of investment in battery. But other than that, rest of it is all very, how should I put it, very conventional engineering. The electric motors, and the car will still run on tires. It will still have a suspension. It will still have seats. It will still have a steering column, those kind of things. So these are all common parts which you already have. It's just the battery part, and the engine goes away and the exhaust system is no longer needed. So a little bit of configuration is required, which manufacturers have already done. There will be more EVs being launched globally. In India, it's been slow. And like, if I can point out to a case in point from Maruti, which is the largest market player in India, a lot of people look at what Maruti is doing and decide where the industry is heading. So Maruti announced initially that they will have a electric version of the Wagon-R, and they would launch it in 2020. That was the initial announcement they made. Then they said that, oh, the market is not ready, and so we will not launch it in 2020. We will launch it in 2021. Now this is 2021, and now Maruti doesn't talk about that at all. So you can take it for granted that this year also that car is not going to come, even though the car is ready. So it's not like the car is not ready, or there is some more work to be done. That's not the case at all. The car is ready. I've seen it. It's going around town in Gurgaon, where it's being tested for kilometers on end to look at the range and look at some of the other aspects of the cars for testing, etc. But Maruti does not want to launch the car yet, which gives you a clear indication that the market is not ready. The consumers are not ready.
Great. I mean, just a quick follow-up to that. So, I mean, recently Tesla also made a lot of noise, right? Tell us about what that whole story was, and is Tesla really serious about Indian market, and are they going to manufacture here, or it's again going to be like the import story and sell it in the Indian market?
So Tesla is a very interesting case study because they don't have anybody in India. They have identified an office and where there will be people sitting in Bangalore, but we don't know yet what is going on in Elon Musk's mind. If you look at some of the tweets that he has made about his India entry, these are very, very monosyllabic tweets, just 3 or 4 words, and that's about it. What we do know is that behind the scenes, Tesla is lobbying very, very hard for some very deep incentives from the government, especially if it has to manufacture the cars here. Now, the government obviously wants Tesla in because it will be a big shot in the arm for India as an economy. If you have Tesla coming in, manufacturing cars, it will also give a lot of boost to the EV ecosystem in India because Tesla works at the cutting edge of electric vehicle technology. But Tesla wants some very consistent and focused incentives, and they know that Indian government has a tendency to flip flop, and they are wary of that. And a few years back, Elon Musk had tweeted that the taxation in India is way too high, and so we cannot come into India. But this was 2016, if I am not wrong. But taxation policies haven't really changed since then, and this is we are talking about import duties. And initially, Tesla would only be importing cars into India. They cannot manufacture here because simply there's no volumes for a car like that. If you're going to price a car at 35 lakh, you will not get huge volumes that justify any manufacturing here. So initially, it will be imports. Now Tesla wants that give us some kind of a huge rebate so that we can price it low and there is some acceptance of the car, and that will in a way be the precursor to us setting up a factory here. So that's a graded, staggered manner that any manufacturer wants, including Tesla. But the government as of now has not given them any assurance, but that's what behind the scenes is happening. I personally don't have any idea really about what is the interaction going on. What I gather from other manufacturers is that, for example, some of the other luxury car makers, they are a little scared because they have also been lobbying and the government has been saying, oh, we are not listening to you. But they are scared because they know that government is listening to Tesla. And closer to when Tesla finalizes their plans based on what government assures them or offers them, there will be some movement. And probably this will happen later this year. So I know for a fact that there will be something. But as of now, what appears is that they are just setting up an office here. They will do some back-end IT work, some software development, because Bangalore is the hub for software. So they will do that here. And a lot of work can come into India because India offers very affordable talent for this. Some of the global work for software can happen in Bangalore. And they will probably have a purchasing office where you will look around and maybe buy some parts for their electric motors, some high-end appliances that go into an electric car. But again, the big puzzle is the battery. And they are setting up a gigafactory in China. Now, India wants them to also set up a gigafactory in India by Tesla, but that is where it is getting stuck a little bit because Tesla is not sure. So there will be action, but exactly what will happen and what kind of incentives will India be offering to lure Tesla in and how it will play out is something that we have to look out for.
Sumant, you mentioned about the challenges. You said that Tesla as a company is wary of policy flip-flops in India. Apart from policy, let's talk a little about infrastructure as well. Once in a while these concerns come up, that is India's grid be able to handle the kind of electricity demand that EVs will put in, and is our distribution infrastructure in place for that? One major concern that comes with EV is that can it be taken out station, because would there be any charging points, or would there be a distribution network that supports electric mobility? So if you can tell us a little bit about how much the back-end infrastructure for EV is prepared in India, and if the governments or companies are working something in that area.
Sorry, before you start, you start, just to add one more slice to this question, I was wondering who should build the infrastructure? Should the government build or the manufacturers build? Like, who should build, right? Like, what's your opinion?
No, great. I think both are very, very valid questions, and thank you for asking these questions because this is something that people don't talk about too much, and these are very big challenges. So Shreya reports on the power sector very regularly. She knows how the health of the power distribution companies are right now, the kind of debt that they are carrying on their books, the kind of reforms that are required. It's very clear they are not in the pink of health. And if all the cars or a significant portion of cars and two-wheelers are going to be plugged in, then the entire infrastructure, the power distribution network that we have in India, it will have to change. It will have to become smarter, and way smarter when I say that, because I'll give you an example. A few years back, Ola, the cab aggregator, they did a pilot in Nagpur where they had a fleet of EVs and they set up charging stations in 6 or 7 days, so to say. And then one day they had all the 6 cars parked on the charging bays and plugged in at the same time, and the grid collapsed. So that's just 6 cars. And if that is what is going to happen, and this was then 2016 in Nagpur, I don't think it has changed too much. It is still the same. So when I speak to Ola, this is a very scary kind of a pilot that they ran, and now they've debunked it. So that is where we stand. If all the cars and all the two-wheelers are going to get plugged in at night, peak power load will go up and you will have a collapse. Very simply put, we are not equipped. In Delhi, we are not equipped. In smaller towns, we are not equipped. In villages, we are not equipped. So once in a while, somebody plugs in, that's absolutely fine. It will handle. But if at the same time, too many cars, too many two-wheelers are charging themselves, which is going to happen at nights, that you will have overnight charging being done for cars and two-wheelers, it will have a problem. There will be peak load factors that will just shoot through the roof, and you will have a huge issue in your hands. And we are not talking about it. The power ministry is not talking about it. We need to have more flexible kind of a power distribution in India. Because these are also, the economics of it is also very, very, it will skew everything. Because if you have like a huge peak load factor, but on an average day, if the load factor is very, very less, then the economics doesn't work out. You have a bandwidth and you would want to use most of the bandwidth. So these are all issues that need to be fixed. There are case studies available in developed countries as to how to do it. But it's easier to do it in a smaller country where which is developed and where there is a lot of capital to go around. It is much more difficult to do it in a third world developing country where the complexities are huge. But this needs to be fixed. There's no doubt about that. If it doesn't get fixed, then we are looking at a very scary picture where you will have the cars on road and you will probably have a charging point at your home, but you will not be able to charge because the grid will not take it. And that is a very scary thing. And I personally would not want any consumer to face that. We have worked so hard in India to have some sort of a semblance of 24/7 electricity in major parts of the country. Now, we are not acutely electricity deficient, and it's taken a lot of hard work to get to this point. We do not want to go back to an era where one big appliance comes around and suddenly you are without power. We don't want to go back to those days. And that is what we are headed to if we do not talk about this and we do not do anything about this. So that is one. The other part is who should be setting up this infrastructure, which I think Sandeep asked. Now that's an interesting question, and I wrote a piece for my magazine last year on the kind of business opportunity this is opening up. Setting up charging points, charging network, it's $1 billion opportunity. Right now we have around 55,000, 60,000 petrol pumps around in the country. Now all these petrol pumps are basically what your charging station is going to be. We will probably need even more, because in a petrol pump, your car or two-wheeler basically takes just about 2 minutes to fill up or 3 minutes to fill up. In a charging point, you will be spending more time, so you will need more charging stations. And it's a huge opportunity. It's a big business opportunity, and anybody can have a fair play here. You can have hardcore entrepreneurs or startups coming in, which we are seeing. So there are startups who are tying up with kirana stores. There are startups who are tying up with these big malls and those multiple chains, etc. So there are startups who are investing. There are manufacturers who are investing, saying that, we are selling cars now. How good it would be if we can also sell the fuel, because that's also very lucrative. So there will be manufacturers who will have a play. There should be government. The government should also have a play here, just like government has a play in selling oil. And you will need government to take the lead in some ways, because government ultimately has a lot of money. Then you have big players who might get interested. You can have the Tatas and the Godreges and the Birlas of the world who also might be interested in setting up charging stations. You can have local level community charging stations. Somebody in your locality, he might think that, I have got space and I can set up a charging point and I can make some money out of it. So even that can become a good business opportunity. So everybody will have a play and everybody can make some money out of this. and that is the way it will be in India.
Okay, that's fantastic. I just had one question about. I guess I should have asked this question earlier, but give us a sense of what's the price difference between an EV car versus an ICE car currently? Like on an average, sort of what kind of difference in cost are we talking about from a consumer's point of view?
Okay, so see, there are there are two facets to this. One is, like I mentioned, there are some cars which are completely imported into India, like the Hyundai Kona, you have the MG ZS EV, then you have the Mercedes EQC. Yesterday, what I saw, the Volvo XC40 Recharge, which is their electric version of the SUV, that will also be completely imported. So when you have a completely imported car, automatically your taxation goes up. So it's 60% import duty straight, plus you have different other kinds of taxes, so it goes up to almost 100%, 110%, and it doubles the cost of the car vis-a-vis if you are manufacturing the car in India, which is the case for example, the Volvo XC40 petrol. So that is being assembled in India, so lower taxes, and the Recharge model will be imported, so higher taxes. So that skews up the economics of this. So I will not talk about them. Let's talk about the Nexon EV, which you have a petrol and a diesel, and also an EV version, all being made in India. So similar levels of taxation. In fact, for EVs, you have lower taxation because EVs attract only 5% GST, whereas a petrol Nexon EV will attract 29% GST and a diesel will attract, I think, 32% GST. So you have some sort of a favorable taxation for EVs in that case. So Nexon EV is priced very competitively as far as when you compare it to a diesel Nexon EV, as a diesel Nexon. So it starts at about 14 lakh and it tops out at about 18 lakh or so. And plus you have a lot of incentives going around. So like Delhi government gives you a 1.5 lakh rupee incentive. You have some taxation benefit which was announced 2 years back in the budget, where you take a loan against an EV and you get some tax rebate for that. Plus, you have a lot of waivers, like state governments give you a waiver on road taxation and registration tax, which you have to pay in a conventional vehicle. So, Nexon is a good example where the price parity we have almost reached. We are almost there. It's a very comparatively priced EV. But when I am mentioning Nexon, I should mention about what happened last week with that particular car. So you have a certified mileage of 312 kilometers with the Nexon EV, and there are reports that consumers are getting less than 200 kilometers on the full charge. So 312 kilometers is the claim, and consumers are getting less than 200. And that is where the backlash came in, and there were consumers who wrote to the Delhi government saying that, we are being fooled. And you are giving an incentive thinking this car is great for the environment, and you are being fooled as well because this car doesn't give what it is claiming. And the Delhi government, in an interim move, they said that, we looked at these allegations and they seem to be true, and we are a little disappointed with the company. And so we are removing that 1.5 lakh rupee subsidy that we are giving to Nexon. Now, this is something which sets the cat amongst the pigeons, because there will be problems on range. And we all know that range anxiety is a big factor in an EV. If you buy a car, which is a petrol or a diesel car, and say the manufacturer claims 25 kilometers to a liter, and you are getting only 17 or 18, in most cases you will get that, then it is not a deal breaker, because, okay, you are getting lower mileage, but you can always get it refueled. You will not be stranded on the road. Whereas if you buy an EV which claims 300 kilometers and you are saying that, okay, they claim 300, but it should at least give me 250, right? So I'm traveling from one place to the other and I'm going 200 kilometers every week is what I travel. So this car is good enough. I will buy this car and I will charge it once over the weekend and it will last me a good 1 week. If that is the calculation you're making, and suddenly your car doesn't give you even 200, then you are starting to think that, did I make the right choice? Because now I have to charge it during the week, which may not be possible or not very desirable for you. So this is something that the industry needs to fix, because you cannot have bloated claims, especially with an EV, because then the customer is getting stranded. Until and unless you have superchargers around, where the car can be just fixed in a matter of 10 minutes and you get a 40% bump in charge. Unless you have that, it will be an issue, and which the industry needs to fix. So price wise, like I mentioned, you are almost there. If you have a charging point at home and you don't have too many kilometers to run in a week, and you are just using the car for your roundabouts within the city, you don't want to travel from one city to the next city, just inside the city, then an EV will make sense. But you have to take it with a pinch of salt that it may not give you the range that you are looking for. So that is where we need to sort ourselves out a bit, and the manufacturers need to be a little more responsible when they make claims, and the government should also look at these numbers a little more carefully.
Great. So I have actually two questions. So let's start with the first one. We talked a lot about, EV side of the story, right? But I mean, essentially, if we want to transition away from, EVs to, from ICEs to EV, we also have to perhaps de-incentivize internal combustion engines. So do you think something like a green tax is possible in a low income country like India when it comes to a green tax on internal combustion engines, or does such a tax exist today?
Okay, so this is something that is being discussed in the policy circles, and Nitin Gadkari openly came out and said that he has proposed a green tax on older vehicles. So if you have a petrol vehicle older than 10 years, then very soon probably you will have to pay a tax, additional tax, which you don't have to pay right now because your road registration tax is valid for 15 years. Now, personally, I would not like that because, like you mentioned, we are not a very affluent country, and buying a car is still out of reach for many of us. We have very old cars running around, which is true. So you need to have a scrapping scheme, 15 years and above. But if somebody has already paid the registration charges and the road tax for 15 years, you should not have suddenly come out with a sort of a very retrograde step where you say, oh, after 10 years you pay a little bit more because we want you to consider an EV. Let him decide what is good or bad for him. Please don't decide for him. You just have your policies and you tell him upfront when he's buying a car what the policies are going to be like. And if you have told him that your car is good enough for 15 years, you just stand by that promise. Don't change it after 10 years and he's in a fix. This is something that has already happened in diesel cars where, you bought a diesel car thinking its life is 15 years on the road in Delhi, and the court steps in and says that, oh, diesel cars are polluting, so 10 years and above your diesel car will be, you can't run the car on the road. I don't think it's a good step. It is retrograde. But my opinions don't count. I'm not the policy maker, but the policymakers are looking at it. Now, if I can again play advocate to the devil, I think ICE engine vehicles are already disincentivized, and I will tell you why. I in fact put out a Twitter thread as well a few days back saying cars are the most taxed product in India. So in terms of outright GST, you have between 29% and going up to 50% for cars, which puts it in the sin category. This is the taxation that you have on cigarettes, for example. In that, cigarettes are taxed a little lower because they top out at I think 45%, and in cars it goes up to 50%. So you're taxing cars at more rate than cigarettes. Now, how strange is that? Come on, a car is not a sin. To own a car is not a sin, but you're still taxing it at that level, which is okay. I mean, that's the government's call, and you want to call it a sin, that's all right, and that's also okay. So you're already taxing it at a very high level. Plus, you have the petrol, which goes inside the car, and that is also taxed at insane levels right now. We have almost 60% of the cost of 1 liter of petrol simply on tax. So when a crude price is still at $70, you are paying almost 100 rupees in some places in India for petrol. Now that petrol is also being consumed by a car owner or a two-wheeler owner. So again, he is being incentivized. So I do not think there is any more need for disincentivizing a combustion engine user. Yes, you can again incentivize EVs more so that when somebody goes inside a showroom and starts to do this cost analysis and metrics, he automatically decides that, EV is making more sense and ICE engine vehicles do not make more sense because of taxation, because of fuel, etc. and already you have a 5% GST rate on electric vehicles, and like I said, 29% going up to 50% for petrol or diesel vehicles. So there's already quite a bit of a gap. You can still give out some more incentives, maybe that is required, but incentivize EVs more rather than disincentivizing ICE engine more, because you have already disincentivized them enough, I think. Please don't stretch it beyond the limit, because then it becomes a little, it starts to sound like the theater of the absurd if you start to do it so much.
Great. Sumant, I vaguely remember, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Once you told me a story about how banks are not ready to lend to consumers who want to buy EV. Am I right, or is this not true? Can you, and if I'm right, can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, I did tell you about that, and it is a big concern, because again, that is one thing we haven't touched upon, and good that this gives us the opportunity to talk about this. So basically, what is happening is EVs are expensive. Like as we know, I mean, the cheapest EV costs you 14 lakh rupees, and to buy that kind of a vehicle, you will probably need some sort of a loan. And then you have a lot of industrial users, the commercial users of EVs, the fleet users who want to buy EVs in bulk, and so they go back to the banks for finance. Now, the concern among banks is that what will be the residual price of an electric vehicle 4 years or 5 years down the line? And that is an unknown. And I will tell you why it is an unknown, because we all are very aware of how a lithium-ion battery functions. In a mobile phone, when you buy a smartphone, the initial first 6 months, the battery backup is very good. And then it starts to deteriorate every month on month, till the point when probably after 2 or 3 years, your smartphone will be almost unusable, because it will give you a backup of maybe only 5 or 6 hours. So it is something, a similar fear is there with EVs in the cars as well, that the battery will deteriorate, and that is the nature of lithium ion. It will deteriorate over time. And so if you are getting a range of say 250 kilometers today, 5 years down the line, probably the range will drop to half, if not lower, maybe 130 or 140. So now if it's giving you 130 or 140, a car is anyway a depreciating asset. What should be the price of that vehicle? That is something that you don't know. Now, if a bank is financing that car for you and you happen to default after 3 years, and the bank wants to confiscate the vehicle and keep it with themselves, they don't know at what price they will be able to sell that product. And any banking correspondent will tell you that how they decide on the interest payment for any loan depends on what will be the residual value of that particular product, if in the unlikely scenario of a default where they have to get the product back into their own fold. So if you don't know the residual value, how do you decide on what will be the terms and conditions of financing? So that is a concern, which is why banks are reluctant as of today to give out too many loans. Obviously, if you are a very good, very healthy consumer with a very high CIBIL score, the banks will still go ahead and give you a loan with a higher interest rate, saying that, oh, this customer is safe and there's very little chance that he will default, so we don't have to think about residual value in this case at least. But still they will charge a higher rate, because they want to be a little more sure. But if you happen to be a consumer who has no banking history, for example, or a not so great credit score, the banks will be a little more wary about financing an EV to you vis-a-vis a normal ICE combustion engine vehicle, because in an ICE vehicle, the parameters are very well mapped out. 5 years hence what will be the price of a Swift petrol, for example. If the price of it is 7 lakh rupees on road right now for a new car, you know what it will be 5 years down the line, because the market is there, the pricing is there. So the banks are very sure about what they are going to get. So that is the concern, that the residual value of an EV is not known. And this is also something that a consumer needs to be aware of, that probably your range will drop as you live with the car longer. And if the range drops, then you need to be a little more, I would not say circumspect, but I would say that you should be prepared for that, because all this while that you have spent with the car, you have saved a lot of money, because you're charging from an electric socket, you're not paying for the petrol, so you're saving a lot of money. So maybe even if you use it for 5 years and the car becomes junk after that, almost junk, you are probably still in the positive. But you need to be a little aware of that, and that's all.
Great. That's amazing. That's such a fascinating story about like banks being wary of. I mean, yeah, it expanded my brain when I thought about that. So coming to a very big picture question, right? You touched upon this a little bit, but let's expand on this topic about government's tax collection, right? So just as a background, India collects lots of taxes from after importing oil. And then that is basically a large chunk of India's revenue collection, especially the federal government. But I think state governments also collect some taxes. So Sumant, I mean, has somebody thought about what would happen if India sort of like has, the entire market is covered by EVs? And so what happens to this fiscal issue of tax collection? And first of all, like what percentage of total revenue collection is from petrol and diesel taxes? And explain us like how has anybody thought about this problem of EVs rising on the one hand, and on the other hand, let's say the petrol consumption goes down, and so how does it impact the fiscal situation?
Very good point, and glad that you asked this, because in one word, is anybody thinking about this? The answer is no, and which is what puts doubts into your mind from the point of view of the policymakers, what is going on, because you are collecting a lot of money from selling oil. And I don't know in percentage terms how much of it is from oil, but I know for a fact that almost 5 lakh crore is what the oil sector's contribution to both the national and state exchequer is. I think the central government collects something about 3 lakh and above crore, 3 lakh crore and above from oil every year. And the state government gets about 2.7 lakh crore, or thereabout in that vicinity. So together you are collecting almost 5 lakh crore plus from oil alone. This is by way of excise duties. This is by way of the dividends that your oil marketing companies pay you. This is by way of VAT in the case of state governments. So all combined, it's a humongous figure. And last year in 2020, when the economy was down in the dumps because of the pandemic and lockdown, excise duties was the only subhead of the government revenue which posted a growth. It posted a growth even though your oil consumption during the year actually went down. So you sold less oil, but you gained more out of it because you increased your excise duties by 13 to 16 rupees per litre. So even by selling less oil, you are gaining more. But even after that, the government actually wants consumers to use more oil. Just last week, there was a report that the Indian Oil Corporation is investing billions of dollars to expand their refinery in Mathura or Panipat, I think. So they are expanding refineries. They are opening up more petrol pump stations, and all of them are expanding refineries. Indian Oil, BPCL, Reliance, they are all expanding their refineries. So they are not holding tight, or they are not tapering it down, thinking, 5 years down the line it will be EVs. So where will all this oil go? No, they are very clear that oil consumption will continue to grow up, and the government is hopeful that oil consumption continues to grow because they will get more taxes, and which is what I was saying, that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is up to. So if the Ministry of Heavy Industries is going all gung-ho about EVs and Niti Aayog is going all gung-ho about EVs, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas is actually going all gung-ho about oil consumption. So then something is not right. How can both be very gung-ho about each other? I mean, their own respective selves. Because it's not some third party who's going to come and use EVs. It is the petrol car user today who will shift to an EV, which will have an impact on your petrol consumption. And if it is going to have a petrol consumption impact, then oil ministry should be worried. And the central government should be worried that, where is going to, all that tax that I'm collecting today, where is that going to come from if oil consumption goes down? But it's very clear that it is not going to go down, and so they are sitting pretty. So which is what I say, that where is this headed? Why is there no concerted effort at bringing all of this together? Because it may not happen in 10 years, but eventually by 2040 or 2050, the impact on oil consumption is going to come because EVs is going to take off. It may not take off, like I said, it may not take off in 5 years. It may not take off in maybe even 10 years, but eventually it will have an impact. And we are not talking about that impact. We are not thinking about what will happen where maybe the fiscal responsibility has to shift from oil to something else to compensate for it. And similarly, like I said, for the grid connectivity, that the grid needs to change. And the Ministry of Power is not really thinking about that. The state power distribution companies do not have the financial health to be able to do that. And we are not talking about that. We are not talking about the fiscal responsibility for oil. That the taxation has to move to somewhere else. And you cannot be taxing power consumers, for example, because then it will have a huge boomerang effect. If you really jack up prices of power, then even non-EV users are also getting penalized because you're using power for your electricity in the house. It's the same power which goes into the EV. So you cannot be penalizing them. Then you need to get the tax from somewhere else. And we are not talking about that. The government is not talking about that. So if the government is not talking about that, then the only conclusion that I can draw is that this whole talk about EV is actually only talk. That in effect, the government knows nothing major is going to happen in the next at least 10 to 15 years and they are sitting pretty. That is what my conclusion is. That yes, it's always fashionable to talk about EVs, but in reality, the government knows it's not going to happen anything.
That's great.
Yeah, I was building up to that, but before that, it's great that Sumant mentioned that there's so much talk on EV, but it's still oil. There's so much planning happening around oil, so much expansion happening. It just came to my mind. At the same time, there are a lot of aggressive planning happening, ambitious planning, I'd say, happening in EV as well. Ola is building this huge center in Bangalore dedicated to electric mobility, electric vehicles. Then I was reading up recently, Tamil Nadu is becoming such a huge hub for electric vehicles. There are so many two-wheeler and four-wheeler companies that are there. And leading companies, as you also mentioned, are talking about EV. But then at the same time, there is no one who is incentivizing either EV or disincentivizing petrol and diesel cars. Amidst all this, what do you think is the way to, go forward in electric mobility? What needs to be done in terms of policy, public communication, and, building this consciousness around electric mobility?
Okay, great. So first on the point of Ola Electric, I know what they are saying and what all announcements they are making. I would take it with a sort of a pinch of salt because what they are saying is very, very simply, very, very outlandish. When you say that you will have, a factory that will manufacture, I don't know how much they said, 2 million or something, 2 million two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers every year. That number is humongous. That is the biggest two-wheeler manufacturer in India right now, which is Hero. They are making about 7.5 million, 75 lakh two-wheelers every year. And then you are talking about a number from a rank nobody who has not made any vehicle yet to be talking about a number which is even bigger. I mean, it's outlandish. It's simply stupendous. If they are able to do it, I don't know how they will be able to do it. Manufacturing is one thing, but selling is quite another. How they will sell these many two-wheelers, I don't know. Let's wait and watch. But the numbers are quite big, scarily big, which is why I'm saying I'll take it with a pinch of salt. Having said that, yes, Tamil Nadu and Telangana, they are emerging as hotspots, and it's not surprising because Tamil Nadu already is an auto hub. You have so many manufacturers already there, and so it's very obvious that Tamil Nadu will become a hub for EVs, and I expect that maybe Gujarat will also become another hub for EVs because that's also an auto hub. As far as incentives are concerned, yes, the strategy should be to maybe not incentivize EVs, the vehicles, so much, but I think the real need is to incentivize setting up charging stations, because that is where the business plan is still a little hazy, that you can set up a charging station but you will not have vehicles coming in to charge very often because the number of vehicles is less. And so maybe you need to give them some stops so that they keep afloat till such time that you have more vehicles on the road who are able to use your charging points. Also, you need high capacity superchargers as well, not just the basic 15 ampere sockets where it takes an eternity to charge a vehicle. Now these superchargers, they cost a lot of money, and we are not manufacturing them in India right now. They are all getting manufactured in Europe. So we need that industry to take off. So the real challenge right now is less with products, it is more with the infrastructure, which is to charge. And that is where the government focus ought to be. That is where the government needs to handhold entrepreneurs and industry players. That please set up charging points, please set up superchargers. We will probably give you land at reduced rates in very peak areas. Have probably multimodal kind of a parking lots where you have charging points everywhere, and bill it in some way or the other. Maybe leave it free for some time till such time it proliferates, and then you start charging them. So some sort of a out of the box thinking, innovation, incentives is required on the charging aspect, not so much on the product aspect, because like I mentioned, we are almost reaching parity, and globally the lithium ion prices are dropping very fast. We are almost close to the $100 per kilowatt hour kind of range. Typically, if it comes down to below 80, we will reach parity with petrol and diesel. Like I mentioned beforehand, we have already sufficiently disincentivized petrol and diesel cars, and there's the whole majority of people are still using these cars. So please don't burden them more. They know what is coming. They're all gung-ho about EVs, and they want to switch to that bandwagon. Like I said, just the other day, the calls that I get, nowadays people just call me and inquire about cars, and they tell me upfront that probably this is the last time I'm buying an internal combustion engine vehicle. The next time I go back into the showroom will be for an EV. So I'm buying a car right now. Maybe I will live with it for another 5, 6, 7 years. And then after 5 years, when I go back into the showroom, it will be for an EV. So a lot of people are already openly saying this, and they know that right now EV doesn't make sense, but in 5 years' time it will make sense, and the next car will be an EV. And from a product perspective, I can tell you, once you use an EV, you are not going back to an ICE engine ever. The performance is so thrilling, the experience is so novel and new, and it is so effortless. You will never go back to an ICE engine ever. So you already have so much going for you. The only bits is about how to charge. That is the only big problem that you have. So we need policy support there. The product will take care of itself. The industry is very big. It is one of the most advanced industries across the world. The industry will take care of itself. It is the charging that needs support, and that is where the focus ought to be.
Wow, fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Sumant. We had such an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Shreya.
For more information about the podcast, visit us online at www.101reporters.com/podcast/the_India_energy_hour. You can also reach out to us on social media and send us your comments and suggestions. My Twitter handle is @SandeepPai with a double I, and Shreya's Twitter handle is @Shreya_J.